Welcome in, everyone. This is the morning meeting. Sean, Dan, and I are not the least bit distracted. We are focused, as Bill Clinton said in 1992, like a laser beam on bringing you the best possible morning meeting, patterned on the television network news division's morning meetings. We bring peace, love, and understanding to this, and we let you in on the conversation. So please, if you're here on the two-way platform and you want to get in on the big chatter, raise your hand and be ready to be called on after I
would
run through
just
the
note
day
we
book.
do remain entirely tariff-free. Entirely
Tariff-free. We are
tariff-free.
tariff-free. And we're not, we're also, we're probably immune to the tariffs because we produce nothing here and we import nothing. Welcome in, everybody. I'll run through the day book. Sean, Dan, and I are going to talk about a bunch of stuff, and then we'll take your questions or comments. First off, breaking news moments ago, all right, 30 minutes ago, the GDP numbers for the first quarter are out, and they, to use the classic economic term, suck. Put up 106, please. Now the president's going to say it's got nothing to do with this, probably. And there is other economic data that's positive. Dow's been up 5 days in a row, for instance. U.S. economy shrunk 0.3% in the first quarter as Trump policy uncertainty weighed on business. I'm no economic genius. I'm not an economic historian, but I can tell you there's a possibility we'll be in negative terrain for the second quarter. And Dan, what is the classic definition of a recession?
Two consecutive
now we're going to worry about the definition of a recession. That's interesting.
I've always been worried about it. Anyway, those numbers are not good. They're also, if you want to play the expectations game, they're not as bad as some people thought they might be, but they're pretty bad. So that happened. The president, after having, a press conference on departure, 2 events in Michigan, the primetime interview with ABC, has got another action-packed day where he's going to blab, blab, blab and talk a lot about the first 100 days.
Trying to keep up with Joe Biden.
Yep. Cabinet meeting at 11, open press. President swears in participates in the swearing-in ceremony for the ambassador to the UK, which is an interesting.
Mark and Sean, is Elon Musk at the cabinet meeting today, you think?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. 4 o'clock, the president delivers Investing in America remarks at 4 o'clock. That's full press. And then he's phoning into Chris Cuomo's town hall at 8 o'clock. I'm not sure how long that appearance is going to last. Stephen A. Smith and Sarah Palin and a cast of thousands will be Chris Cuomo's guests at this event. 2-hour tele-town hall with a studio audience as well. Quickly put up the pool, and Sean can tell us, and Dan, whether there's anything you see interesting there. The Independent is the print pool. Bloomberg Government is a secondary print. Free Beacon, One American News, no surprise. Sean, anything you want to say about that?
No, Free Beacon, obviously.
Don't know what the vice president's doing today. We get a second dose of economic data at 10 o'clock when something called the Personal Consumption Expenditures, that PCE, to those in the know, comes out. It's the March data, and this is the Fed's preferred data set for looking at inflation. So we'll see what that's like. Now, Capitol Hill, I could spend the full hour telling you stuff going on the Hill today, and I wouldn't even get down to the dregs. There's lots going on. It's very significant, including a ton of stuff on reconciliation. I'm going to tell you the highlights, but I'm telling you, there's a ton going on. At this hour, Speaker Johnson is speaking at an Axios event. We'll see if anything comes of that. Senate Finance at 10, confirmation hearing for a gentleman named Rodney Scott, who is up to be the head of Customs Border Protection, the commissioner. Leader Jeffries, 10:30 press conference to talk about the president's first 100 days. The Democrats' Heartland Caucus, led by Debbie Dingell of Michigan, at noon talks about tariffs. Also at noon, the Congressional Hispanic Caucus holds a press conference to talk about the deportation of American citizen children. Much in the news. 2:30, Chuck Schumer, and then Part 2, Jeffries, hold another press conference on the Senate steps to talk about Donald Trump. Speaker Johnson also is meeting with the SALT caucus, the Republicans who want to raise the cap in the most misguided public policy provision ever passed, a tax break to deduct state and local taxes. I don't know why it exists. It'll make me a wealthier person if they succeed, but it's madness. Tom Emmer and Richie Torres, one Republican, one Democrat, are founders of the Congressional Crypto Caucus. I do not believe the founders ever foresaw the establishment of the Congressional Crypto Caucus. Those 2 gentlemen are holding a fireside chat to celebrate crypto this afternoon. And then tonight, at some point, the Senate's going to vote on a measure to say the Trump tariffs should go away. It'll never pass the House. It's a fully symbolic vote. But every Democrat will vote for it. And 4 Republicans who previously voted against Trump tariffs in a similar vote, the 2 Kentucky senators, Rand Paul and Mitch McConnell, and then Mavericks Forever, Lisa Murkowski and Susan Collins, are all potentially poised to vote with the Democrats to repudiate the president's trade agenda. Again, the Republican leadership in the Senate and the White House are working very hard to try to win one of them back. Dan, of the 4, who's the most likely to vote with the White House?
Collins, because she's up for re-election.
Sean.
I don't think you can move the others.
Yeah, I don't even know that. I'd be interested to see that. Well,
the correct answer is none of them. None of them.
All right. So if those 4 lock in,
yeah,
do they get another 4 or 5 because they say this is going through and a few people want to be on the record?
No, okay. I don't think so. Maybe. I hadn't thought about that, but I don't think so. All right. 10:45 Eastern time tonight. An incredible moment to influence the news cycle up here back east. Vice President Harris speaks to Emerge in San Francisco. Washington Post is a very good curtain raiser for this. If you're not familiar with Emerge, they played a huge role in Kamala Harris's career and in the election of women around the country. They're an extremely important organization. And she's chosen this occasion to give a big speech. We'll talk about that.
That's Andrea Dusteel and Susie Buell. Yep.
All right. 5 o'clock today, the judge in the Abrego Garcia case has set another deadline for the administration to provide more information about what exactly happened there. Last night in his ABC interview, the president seemed to say that, yes, he could get Abrego Garcia back if he wanted to. I think it's an uncharitable reading of what he meant, honestly, but it's being interpreted as his having, and people are curious to see if the judge will say, well, the president said he could get him back. We'll talk about that.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. That's not.
Right. So let's go there. ABC interview. The things that are getting the most attention, besides how tetchy it was between Terry Moran and the president, are what he said about tariffs and what he said about the Abrego Garcia case. Sean, anxious to jump in. What are your lessons from the ABC interview?
I just don't know that it was the right time to have a contentious interview like that. I don't know. Like, I think exactly what we kind of predicted was going to happen. Like, I think the president made Terry Moran look like a fool. I think ABC got to have their moment if in a piece, the left that said, see, we're out there being the resistance. I just don't know that on the 100th day mark, that was the interview to have. Like, you should, that's actually when you want your feel good, positive media to run. So I think that my takeaway is, the hostile media serves a purpose at times when you want to show you're fighting. I'm not sure that was the best time to have that on a day that, by the way, you're having 2 kind of rallies. So it's one of the reasons that we always used to have this informal rule that the press secretary doesn't speak on camera when the president's speaking is you don't want to undermine the president. And it's almost like there's a corollary rule that says don't have other interviews that are going to undermine the big rallies if you're going to try to get the attention there. So I felt like they took away from 2 big Michigan events that were going to capture all the attention by having this thing. And again, I think most people on the right loved the interview because it was contentious and he made Terry Moran look like a fool for a lot of stuff. But I also think that it was scrappy, not an opportunity to highlight all the accomplishments.
Dan.
I think reality bites. I think he's struggling in the polls. He's struggling on almost every issue, and he struggled to explain it in the interview, and it showed. His talk on inflation is starting to fail the common sense test. It's the first time I've ever said that about Donald Trump. And I think it was really apparent. He was scrambling all over the place. He was contradicting himself. He said, I had to do this when, of course, he didn't. He chose to do it. And he tried to say that prices aren't going up when just people in their everyday lives, Sean, you say it. I mean, it's not a question of a government statistic. It is in your gut. Do you feel like things are better or you think things are getting worse? And when you dig in like that, and that was Biden's problem, he would not acknowledge it. He would not give an inch. So, look, on the immigration stuff, on the DOGE stuff, I didn't think it was great. Sean, I think the base, loved everything he said. But, it's tough. He's in a tough spot right now, and it showed.
By the way, like last night, just echoed statistics that the Media Research Center put out. 92% of the coverage of President Trump in the first 100 days negative. And here's the kicker on the cabinet. They did a little deep dive on them. 89% of the coverage on RFK negative, 96% of the coverage of Elon Musk negative, and 100% of the coverage of Pete Hegseth negative.
Sean, how does the president feel about the Cuomos?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I think there was a moment during COVID when former Governor Cuomo, he felt like they had a decent relationship because Governor Cuomo praised some of his response. So I don't know. I think it's gone back and forth. And I think with Chris, I don't know. It's a good question. I think it's probably goes back and forth a little.
I think he's known Andrew for years. I mean, I think from his father and being his father's right hand, I've always heard
they're sons of queens. I ask because, Andrew's about to become the mayor of New York, and he's doing Chris's town hall tonight, although only as a phoner.
But isn't that's the O'Reilly Cuomo town hall, right?
Well, yeah, O'Reilly's involved. But I don't know if O'Reilly booked him.
Well, again, I can't say for certain.
He does like Bill. All right.
And I think Bill, when I talked to Bill, it seemed anyway,
there's a lot going on between the White House and Republicans on the Hill. There's tension over tariffs, there's tensions and cooperation over reconciliation. There was this thing that was floated that now seems there was tension over whether to let the top individual rate rise rather than keep it the same through reconciliation. There was this crazy thing floated, which Politico now says is dead, that they were going to apply a $20 car tax to every car in America, a gasoline-powered car. Dan, what's your sense of the current status between the White House and congressional Republicans? Are they in concert? Are they in tension? What's your sense of where that is?
Well, I think they're both. I think we've always said that their strategy the last 3 months has been kick the can down the road, just say, hey, look, this is a process vote. Let's go to the next step, and then we'll reconcile our differences, later on. Well, we're kind of getting to the point where those differences have to be reconciled. So that is a natural evolution of the process. The challenge is the deltas remain significant as the president's poll numbers are going down and members of Congress see the generic ballot. Fox News had Democrats leading by the largest margin in, I think, 9 years on the generic ballot. People are starting to dig in a little bit. And so the question is not just whether it's 1.5 or 1 trillion or less than 1 trillion in cuts, but what are those cuts? And the biggest one seems to be over Medicaid. Is it 500 billion? Is it a trillion? Is it 800 billion? And so I think, we're going to see whether they can finesse this. And look, this is what it was for Democrats with Obamacare. Like, big bills done through reconciliation with narrow margins require immense hand-holding and greasing of the wheel.
Yeah, Sean, I'm picking up there's a lot of tension over tariffs. And for a while, it seemed like tariffs might make it more likely to pass reconciliation because they had to get it done to change the story and to goose the economy. I get the sense from talking to people on the Hill now that this is a big point of tension. They briefed yesterday at the Senate lunch to try to calm the horses. But where do you think things stand on those range of issues and the overall mood music between the two sides?
At least, and I can't tell how widespread it is. I think there's a bit of a degree of frustration because the House and the Senate guys, as Dan kind of alluded to, have to live in a world of details. You have to put legislative text down that says, here is the rate. And I think one of the issues that there's a seeming, a little bit of maybe tension, to use your word, is the White House position isn't always is firm on paper, right? So we need 38% versus 37. All those things matter when it comes to the score of the bill and all of these kind of things. And I don't think that nailing them down is always the easiest thing in the world because the president doesn't, he doesn't, can be swayed. And so I think part of the problem is they're trying to get some of this stuff locked down and have a better, stronger roadmap to move forward for, and they can't get that degree of certainty that they need.
Yeah, I will tell you, and then we'll move on. I had thought, and I've said it on the program, failure is not an option here. They have to pass it. They use the narrow margins to their advantage to say, guys, everyone has to vote yes, guys and gals. I'm upgrading the prospect of failure, that reconciliation may not pass. And then, because they're playing this game of chicken with the debt ceiling, they might have to make a deal with Democrats, which would alter the trajectory of the Trump presidency dramatically if it comes to that. but that's not, you can't rule that out anymore. I still think they'll pass it more, still the base case, but you can't rule out that they have a crisis because they can't pass this.
Yeah, so here's the play. They put this together, they start moving forward, they get 7, 8, 12 people that say no. They go back to the drawing. I mean, I'm sorry, but I've seen the movie.
Yeah.
And this, but it has to pass, and it will pass.
I
mean,
I think you're right. It's the
it
most
may not
likely
be
outcome.
pretty, and it may take a while. And I think that there's going to be, my guess is a minimum of 2 like fits and starts where it goes, they back off, it goes again, they get it real close to the finish line, and something to do probably on the Medicaid or on the savings side pushes back. But they'll throw enough in there on like the state and local tax deduction or whatever to get enough of these guys bought off.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree.
The Cornhusker kickbacks. Get them ready.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. We said Kamala Harris is speaking tonight. Schumer and Jeffries are speaking out. There's a strong belief in the party now, the Democratic Party, that fighting is there, that people are not just going to sit back and let stuff happen. They're not discombobulated. They're not overwhelmed. Obviously, giving a speech on a Wednesday night at 11 o'clock Eastern is not the best way to get attention. If you read the Washington Post curtain raiser of the Harris speech, it reeks of her normal indecision. Is she going to run for governor? She's freezing the field there to some extent. Is she going to run for president? Dan, what's the best case for Kamala Harris to have this speech have impact regarding what she says and how it gets covered?
The party has a leadership vacuum. And so she was our leader as the presidential nominee. She did come within, 1.5% of winning the race. And we just talked about J.B. Pritzker. We've talked about AOC. What are they doing? They are out. They are speaking with clarity. They are unafraid. They are challenging Trump directly. We can laugh at what they're saying, but the base is loving it. If you're Kamala Harris, what are you going to do? Right? Are you going to lean in? Are you going to, try to be the national face of the party, to take the baton, try to fill this void? Or are you thinking of running for governor and you're going to kind of go smaller a little bit? I think, as you say, she is historically indecisive. And to date, she just has not really wanted to go there and really throw punches.
Hey, guess what? Here's the beauty. I saw this movie too, and it sucks. It's just, I don't think, I mean, to quote some of your financial buddies, Dan, past performance is no guarantee of future results, except well when played. It is. Except when it is. She has never given a good speech. I've never seen Kamala Harris give a good speech.
Oh, her announcement speech in 19 was pretty good.
25,000.
What? I'm sorry, I just fell asleep for a second.
Go watch it. It was good.
Yeah, I'll go back on my Netflix and find that one. Look, the bottom line is, I think the timing of this, we talked yesterday about how to do a Pritzker. The idea of saying, I want to roll something out significantly at 11 o'clock Eastern. I mean, just, it reeks of bad decision-making, bad planning, bad staff work.
Yeah. So yesterday, we're going to talk about 28, but let me just bring it up now. Yesterday, Gina Raimondo gave a frank yes when asked by David Axelrod if she's considered running. Most of the people talked about running are men in 28 for the Democrats. Dan, who are women besides Kamala Harris who might run, besides Gina Raimondo and her?
Gretchen Whitmer.
Amy Klobuchar, Gretchen Whitmer. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say Amy Klobuchar is the second. Does AOC run? I mean, those are your three.
I just wonder if Harris decides to run, and I don't think she will. But if she does, as the former nominee with deep ties to groups like Emerge and Emily's List, does she box out other women from running and raising money?
No, not at all. Because I think the thing is, and we've joked about this. Kamala's run as a liberal in 19. She tried to run as a, quote, moderate in 24. We don't know what lane she is going to try to go down. And so I just think whatever those first few states are, JB, AOC, Cory Booker is the only black candidate, I believe, so far. Maybe Harris would jump in, are running as the unapologetic progressives. You're going to have Whitmer and Shapiro and Bashir are going down that, like, we work, we head down, we're pragmatists, states that Trump won. Right. I don't know where Harris tries to go there. Which camp is she going to pick?
Reigning champ.
Look, to answer,
but she's not, and that's the thing. Nobody sees her as a champ. She got this as a like, Biden steps down, it's you go.
Right.
So nobody fears her. Nobody in the party fears her whatsoever. Nobody.
Yeah. I mean, look, Kamala Harris couldn't box out a 6-year-old.
Yep.
She has there's no
Agreed.
political strength there.
Nope.
I after reading that the Amy Parnas John Allen book fight, um, just to me, if that's just such a bad scenario to see her go again. She ran a bad campaign. She's a bad candidate. I don't think anyone's feel for her at all. So I'm not.
Mark, if she runs and South Carolina is first, do you think Jim Clyburn jumps out in front and says, I'm with her? Because he saved Biden's bacon there.
Probably, but not definitely.
Do you think if Cory Booker's in the race, he would do it? Because I think Booker blocks him out from doing it.
So let me say this, and then I want to show you something that Ted Cruz said about the Democratic field. We'll move to this topic since we're here. I see in the chat and I hear all the time from people the two names, Beshear and Wes Moore. And I will tell you folks what I've said before, and this is not just directed at those two guys. You can read clippings and you can watch some sound bites. Those two guys are not tested on the national stage. John Kerry was tested on the national stage. Mitt Romney was tested on the national stage. Those guys are not tested on the national stage. So you can be like George Clooney and look at the mirage and say, oh my God, look how great Wes Moore looks. Or Governor Beshear's from a red state. He must be a fantastic politician. I'm not saying negative things about these guys. I'm just saying you are in a fantasy world if you think you know enough about them to say, of course they can be strong general election candidates. And by the way, of course they can run the gauntlet of the nomination process. I'm not saying they won't be the nominee, but I'm saying you do not know enough to say that they'd be strong. Nobody does. Nobody does.
But I will say this, just like a scouting report. Look, and I agree with you, Mark. I mean, I think anytime there are people that would make good governing officials that are horrible candidates, and there are good candidates that make horrible governing officials. And part of what it takes to be a good presidential candidate is the combination of the two. But I will say from a scouting report standpoint, and again, I've said this before, so Wes Moore, if I were scouting talent, I'd say, hey, let's give this guy a couple at bats and see what he looks like.
Sure.
I'm not as bullish on Beshear, by the way. I do think, like I said, the thing about Wes Moore that's different, and I can't say that I know the same about Kentucky in terms of, I'm just trying to think back if they've had a natural disaster or anything, but the bridge incident in Baltimore, just outside Baltimore, I thought, again, it's a test. When you have a crisis, it shows, do you have a good team? Do you have good planning? Do you have good execution? And so you can kind of get a sense of somebody's skill set when you analyze how they handle a crisis. And I mean, again, it's not always a perfect test by any means, and it doesn't mean that you'll be a great candidate. But I think he's attractive. He speaks well. He's got a great resume. I mean, like, to me, he is somebody that I would say, let's get this guy up. I mean, I think consultants who look out and say, who's the guy that I want to bet on? Same way that you bet on Obama early.
Let's get Scott Walker up. Let's get George Allen up. Let's give them a few at-bats.
And again, it doesn't mean that, right? Thank you, and thank you. It doesn't mean that you're gonna hit it out of the park, but you'll get at least your shot in training camp.
Here's what Ted Cruz told me last night on the premiere episode of my new show Next Up, which if you haven't watched, please do, or listen to it as a podcast. Ted Cruz, I met him in 2000 when he worked for the Bush campaign, and then of course he ran for president. He's very knowledgeable about the dynamics of presidential politics. Here he is when I asked him about the dynamics for the Democrats in 2028.
Who's the most formidable to win a general election? Who do you look at the way Democrats looked at George Bush in 98 and 99 and said, if that person's their nominee, going to be tough to beat?
Oh, look, someone who is more moderate or reasonable. So you look at names like a Mark Kelly or a Josh Shapiro or an Andy Beshear. I think they could be formidable in a general. I don't know that they have a prayer of winning a Democrat primary. Gavin Newsom is clearly incandescently ambitious. So he is going to try to morph into whatever he thinks the Democrat primary base wants. I don't know that it's impossible that AOC gets the nomination in 2028. I do think the id of the Democrat Party continues to be far left. So I don't see them going towards an attractive general election candidate right now. I think the crazies are still driving the train.
Dan, what do you think of that analysis?
Yeah, no, look, I think it's pretty good. I actually was talking to someone in DC the other day who said it's not true that Elizabeth Warren hasn't been president. Like, most of her staff was in the Biden administration, and look at what we got. Look, this always happened. We always flirt with the progressives. We flirted with Howard Dean, right? People flirted with Sanders. For people don't remember, Elizabeth Warren in the fall of 19 was the it candidate, and she rose, and then she got, tied up on Medicaid for all. Like, we always do this, and historically, when the real voting has happened, the party has kind of gone back to who they think is the more electable, pragmatic candidate. Will history repeat itself? I don't know, but we are going to have some pretty strong kind of, moderate governors that are going to run. And I think, there's a long way to go. As you say, Mark, you don't know how good of an athlete you are until you get out there. Opposition research starts dropping on you. Crises like, interviews, going to meet with voters, got to see what states are coming. So, I think Ted Cruz is, off, but he's not totally off.
No, I think it's actually pretty spot on. I mean, the problem is that if you're a reasonable, pragmatic Democrat, whoever that is, you cannot get through the primary. They want fight, crazy. Well, I mean, the base is still living in the world of we want more woke policies and we want to double down on nuts. So I don't see how you get through a Democratic primary. I will say this just as a side note, because I think, Mark, you referenced this the other day on both New Hampshire, and then we talked, Dan referenced South Carolina. At some point, we should have a discussion about how and when those decisions are going to be made, because that plays into a lot of that the progression of those states. You're absolutely right, Dan. If South Carolina's like first in the line, suddenly a Jim Clyburn becomes a massive player, and the African-American vote in the Democratic primary has an outsized proportional weight on who becomes the early nominee versus New Hampshire and Iowa. But like, those things actually matter big, and the inside baseball about the calendar matters.
Sean, the only thing I would say that I disagree with you about is, unlike in your party, where the base has been pretty dominant in Senate primaries, gubernatorial primaries, and in the general election, i.e., if you're not the Trump candidate, it's really hard to win. In our party, the base's track record of winning hot Senate contests, governor's races, and presidential primaries is terrible. Right? And that is the difference between our party. What you see on Blue Sky or X is the super vocal, minority. But the majority of our party is actually kind of like a silent, quiet, moderate middle.
Totally.
Right, fair enough, but that's, I think, the calendar matters too.
Sure, of course.
Because if you go through New Hampshire and Iowa, I think you end up exactly kind of closer to where you are. You go through South Carolina first, you end up potentially with you might change that dynamic quickly.
Yeah. All right. Put up 104 and just start letting it play. I still cannot get over Gretchen Whitmer's two mistakes during the pandemic. She went to Florida, I think, to visit her mom. Her husband tried to take out the boat. Slow that down, though, right? Slow that down. Is that slow-mo? I thought it was slow-mo. If not slow-mo, there you go. So pause it, please. Pause it right there. Good. So Gretchen Whitmer during COVID, I thought, handled things poorly. And then she has the Oval Office photo op a couple weeks ago where she has to hold the folder up in front of her face. She agrees to greet the president on the tarmac. Later in the day, he calls her up to speak at the event at the base, and she's got to give these awkward remarks. So here we are. She's reaching out her hand to shake the hand. I believe, Sean and Dan, that when we roll the tape, you'll see that the president did the hug. She was trying to shake hands, and my interpretation, he did the hug. And he continues to appear to me that for some reason the White House just wants to completely screw with her and put her in a bad position. Roll tape, Dan, analyze Zapruder film style. Right? He leans in, right? Bring it back, re-rack it. Re-rack it. And just watch. And it's, everybody can say whether you agree with me or not. The president tricked her into a hug. Yeah, right? She sticks at her hand. He does this, right? It's all him. Why is he trying
to? If you're going to hug someone, you put two arms out. You don't go to shake their hand.
Sean, why is the president trying to screw Gretchen Whitmer politically?
Hold on. Ready? I'm going to throw the flag on this one. After further review, you can clearly see the hug is initiated by the president. We've got full hug. I mean, this
re-rack it one more time. I can just watch it forever. Bring him all the way up the steps. Get him all the way up the steps. I like the anticipation.
Go ahead, Sean. Madden. Mark, I'm going to get you a Sharpie.
Go ahead, Sean.
I mean, I think, look, this is a full, like, they this to me was the one where she again, she found herself in the Oval, getting sort of pulled into that press conference the other day. Then this, and then to your point, the comments in the hangar with the National Guards members is phenomenal. Because if I don't know if we've got it, but I actually have the quote that I'm playing in my show today. But she says something to the effect of, "It's great that we all can be here for the." It was so awkward.
She thanked the president without thanking him. We played it last night on Two-Way Tonight, and it's as awkward as this. I mean, the whole thing is ridiculous. But again, I ask, why is the president so consumed with undermining her?
Guys, I actually don't. Sorry.
I don't think it's I mean, like, I think there's a difference in the word choice here, right? I think they love trolling her. They love the fact that she wants to be against him, and they bait her into situations where she cannot otherwise look like she's, enjoying his company. To me, this is the ultimate troll. Like, it's not like he's being mean to her or ignoring her or walking past her.
But he's putting her in a very tough position with the
I
base of the
know,
party.
but that's the
why?
Oh, because
he's trolling
fantastic.
But why? Why is it in his interest to make?
Because he fears her. Because they know.
No, I think he just loves.
I don't believe that. I don't believe that from talking to his people. I do not believe that they.
No, he just relishes. It's the opposite.
Well, you know what? I actually think it's great for her. I know you guys. I just said our base doesn't win national primaries. They don't win big time primaries. If you're in the moderate pragmatic lane, right? You are going to have to try to win some Trump voters to win the White House, right? Just full stop. We would all agree about that, right? We got less votes.
Yeah.
What better way? She is going to have on camera over and over again him saying she is doing a great job. She is a great governor. So he'll turn around then and, J.D. Vance will say she's horrible and she's off. I actually think that this is, if you're going to run in the pragmatic ring, she's not going to be J.B. Pritzker. J.B. is going to say he's Hitler. So that you're not going to get to the left of those people. I don't think that will win the 2028 primary.
But here's the problem, Dan. So here's my.
I think it's great.
This is like a la Chris Christie here, Obama on the tarmac stuff.
But that's your party, not ours.
No, okay, fair enough. But here's the flaw. I think if she wanted to own that moment and hug him and say, "Welcome to Michigan. I'm glad you're here. We've got problems," and own it. But it's like you can't have it both ways. That's like the most awkward. Her.
Totally agree.
Guys,
walked up to what?
I got to tell you, 99% of America isn't John Maddening the hug.
Of course not.
No,
but the awkwardness speaks.
Nobody cares.
Speaks to her political skills. That is not a person who's got the skills.
Yeah, exactly.
She's got a long
and
time.
her staff should all quit in shame.
You know
By
what?
the way, this is like when you score a touchdown because you fumble the ball into the other person's end zone. No one puts you on the highlight reel as like,
hold on a second.
Fumbled the ball in the end zone.
If you want to ask a question,
Guard base.
Yeah. Yes, she did. Hats off to her.
Touchdown, gentlemen.
Raise your hand if you want to ask a question. We're not going to get
that. Dan, that was a safety. We're
not unfortunately going to get to talking about the indications that Russia is not willing to negotiate, which is one of Dan's favorite topics. And we're not going to get to the mystery of why Punchbowl News, after their big exclusive yesterday on Amazon, did not write a word in their morning newsletter about their big exclusive in the White House. I'm not sure why that happened. We're not going to get to those. Last thing I'll say, thank you for the many of you who submitted questions to the People's Poll, national 1,000-person poll that we're doing with WIC, coming out on Thursday. I apologize to those of you who sent your poll questions to the wrong address because I had the wrong address in the Substack. We have your questions. Most of them are good for next time. You'll be able to resubmit. So thank you for submitting. Many of you will be delighted to see your questions included in the poll. More than 10 of you will have your questions included on Thursday. You'll be able to add your names to that if you wish. But thanks to everybody for participating. And tomorrow, we should add back the results. Might be Friday, but probably tomorrow. We'll have the results. And again, very grateful to you all for participating. I think you will find the poll and the results interesting. And we're very grateful to be doing what we think is the first poll that has community involvement and being able to submit questions.
Mark, can I just say one thing about the Punchbowl Amazon story just very quickly? Because we talked about this a little bit before. Yeah. I would look at who some of their biggest advertisers have been in the last.
Well, no, literally yesterday, Amazon was one of the advertisers. was a spot. I think the sponsor of the
I
newsletter.
have a hard
which
time
broke the
believing they
story.
do not have good sources at Amazon.
Right, but okay, we weren't going to talk about it, but just quickly, they report that Amazon's going to put on the web on the site the price increases attributable to tariffs. Then the press secretary attacks them. The president calls Bezos out of anger. Amazon says, we never were going to do it on the main site. We were going to do it on this other site, but it was never approved. It was not barely under consideration. We're definitely not doing it. I'm just surprised that Punchbowl then doesn't write anything about it.
Okay.
You're not going to sell your sources. They are super well sourced.
I need another flag to throw.
Well, but they didn't say in their original reporting that it was this other site. So was it not the other site? Was that just a lie?
Amazon's lying.
All right, Amazon's lying.
Of course they are.
So shouldn't Punchbowl today say, we stand by our original reporting?
Amazon no, because you don't want people digging through that nexus.
Well, okay, so on one hand, you're saying
interest.
But Dan, on the one hand, you're saying Punchbowl's outstanding, they're excellent. On the other hand, you're accusing them of pulling their editorial punches because of who their sponsors are.
No, I think they're not pulling the punch. I just think that their audience, they don't need to have a standby or do anything. The people who read that, it's inside baseball. They know it.
Yesterday, after it became an issue at the White House briefing in the morning, they were all over Twitter. Our exclusive is being talked about. Understandably so. But then when it turns out that Amazon takes a different position, they're silent. I'm just curious as to why. That's all.
Hello.
John.
We had this whole discussion about pharma the other day. Like, dude, don't be so blatant about who's paying for this. They literally, I mean, it's mind blowing to me. And again, here's the other thing, and this is where the club matters. You notice that for all these people who love to critique, right-wing media, no one says a word about this. There's no Brian Stelter.
Correct.
Like, where are these people saying Punchbowl reports this? Because again, the democracy, freedom of speech,
there's only one person. There's only one person in the media tracking this, as far as I can tell. That's me. Cody, welcome in. Don't break stride. Unmute. Tell us how that camera is being supported, where you are, and what's on your mind. Are you holding the camera?
Yeah, I'm just holding it.
Okay, well,
I'm just here holding it.
All right, thanks. Where are you calling us from?
San Antonio, Texas.
Thank you for being part of Two-Way. What's on your mind, sir?
I just wanted to ask Dan a question. The expectation that he has for DOGE, is it really to come out with $1 trillion in savings in the first 100 days? Because if that was the expectation, if Elon was to come up with $1 trillion in savings in the first 100 days, could you imagine the headlines of the fraud, waste, and abuse in our government? It would be mutiny in the streets. So what is a realistic expectation for DOGE to be successful? Because right now, in my opinion, I really like Dan. I love the show. You guys are great. And I like the Two-Way community. It's awesome. But, I don't think that he's for government savings. You know what I mean?
I am for government savings. I think, but I also don't believe what I'm always told by elected officials. And I think DOGE's goal initially was 2 trillion, then it went to 1 trillion. And then as the president and Terry Moran went back and forth, it's kind of down to 150 billion. And DOGE's own website is going in reverse. Like, they are posting savings and then quietly deleting those posts. So I think the question is, and I've always said this, where does DOGE land? Like, does Congress memorialize some of these cuts, or do they actually quietly put the money back in? Because government spending is increasing. It's not decreasing right now. That is a government fact right now. And so I just want to see kind of what ends up being real and what doesn't. And I think I keep saying this. It's easy to say waste, fraud, and abuse. A bunch of these cuts are not waste, fraud, and abuse. Okay. All of this is congressionally mandated. Republicans have had the majority for most of the last 15 years. A lot of this stuff is appropriated by Republicans. Now, they don't want to say it right now because it's not popular in their party. But to say Joe Biden and Barack Obama didn't just say, great. I am going to print another 50 billion for this. Doesn't work that way.
No, but I will say that not all the agencies, a lot post initial earmark ban, agencies were given an amount. So when earmarks existed, it was a lot more like you said, which is spend this on this program, whatever. Then when Congress, and part of the reason the earmarks are coming back is that Congress was saying we don't have directed
they want more
funding.
control. Yep.
Right. And so the agencies were saying, great, if we get control of the money, this is how we're spending it. The other thing, and one of the things is somebody who has always loved the tagline waste, fraud, and abuse, is I think that we're missing the mark to some degree on the right, which is that it's not just waste, fraud, and abuse, right? It's actually inefficiencies, duplicities, outdated things. Like we hear about things, Dan, and you're right, which is some program in 1962 was created to solve the telephone, issue of whatever
landlines.
And we realized, I mean, I was talking to my former colleague Sarah Huckabee Sanders, the governor of Arkansas, and she had gone through the government of Arkansas to see how many fax lines they still had. And they were just by cutting legacy things that make no sense. Like, again, I don't know anyone who actually has a fax. And so yet many organizations, when I started at the RNC and we were 20 something $million in debt, and we would literally do zero-based budgeting and go through, we had these legacy subscriptions to things that no one even knew still were used, that were 20,000, 30,000, 50,000. And we literally just systematically went through and said, no one's using it, cut it, cut it, cut it, cut it. That's actually just common sense, good government, good accounting. And I think that that's what we need to get back to in the sense of what DOGE should really embrace. Because I do think there's some wasteful spending unequivocally. But I think more importantly, just how we do business is the real atrocity here.
Cody, thank you. Grateful to you. Come back regularly, please. Have a good walk.
I will. Hey, by the way, one other thing that was really interesting. I had Kalen Dorr, I mentioned this on my show last night, and I was asking him tongue-in-cheek initially about when Elon leaves. And he said that one of the things that they have found fascinating is that these cabinet secretaries and their teams are now competing with each other to find additional savings. Like, I don't want to be the one left out, so I need to find more savings at the Department of Interior. Well, the Agriculture Department says, gosh, we got to do more than Interior. So I think that having a healthy competition within government to root out these inefficiencies, this waste, the duplicity, the outdated stuff is actually a very, very healthy spirit within these guys.
John, there are also rumors on the Hill that some of those cabinet secretaries are quietly backdooring to get some of this refunded. I mean, reinstituted. Sorry.
Yeah. True. Well, we'll see. I also think, as I've said before, Rust vote is going to be critical on these rescission packages.
As we welcome Adam in, two things from the New York Post. First, Susie Wiles did a 100-day exclusive interview with the Post. Not a ton of news in it, although she did say Elon's working less from the White House now than he's kind of transitioned out, although he's regularly in touch by a voice and electronically. And the other thing, Mr. Ryan, you'll be interested to know, is the New York Post reports that despite some appearances to the contrary, that Taylor Swift and Travis are still going hot and heavy. So don't worry. Adam, are you in Kansas City?
I'm not. No, I'm from Kansas City, but I'm in Charlottesville, Virginia currently. I'm a law student here. So
yes, sir. Well, thank you for joining. What's the best barbecue in Kansas City?
Gates.
Yeah, Gates. I like that.
Yes, that's the correct answer.
Adam, I have a question. Should the new stadium be in Kansas or Missouri?
I'm from Jackson County, so I like it where it is. I wish we wouldn't move the stadium at all. I think Arrowhead should remain the stadium. So
I got to say, it's not Fenway, but when you drive by the stadium on the highway, it's awesome. It's just like an incredible vision. It's like the Mormon It's like the Mormon temple. Adam, welcome in.
Compare those two things, but
I just mean they're visually striking from the road. That's all I mean.
Sure.
Adam, welcome in. Thank you for joining.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
What year law student are you?
I'm a 1L, so yeah.
How's it going?
Good. Usually I can't call in because I have class, but we're in final season right now, so we're off until I have my next final.
What courses do you have this semester?
I'm in con law, property, free speech course, and then a legal theory and interpretation course as well.
Course at UVA.
Senator Kennedy graduated from that law school, I believe. Yeah? Where were the other famous law school
there's
alums?
4 senators, I believe, currently that are UVA grads.
4 current ones. Interesting.
Yeah.
What's on your mind?
Quote Senator Kennedy. Your words, not mine.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Welcome in, Adam. Thank you for joining. Glad you don't have class today, and honored to have you as part of the community. What's up?
Thanks. Yeah, I have two questions. First one is for Sean. Sean, I'm a Catholic as well. I'm curious if you've been following the conclave and if you have any favorites. And then additionally, if you've seen the reports about President Macron trying to maneuver to stop Cardinal Sarah from being elected.
So I believe I'm accurate when I say that the conclave hasn't started.
No, it hasn't.
Okay, I think so. A little trying to trick me there, Adam. Now I am following it from afar, but I think part of what we talk a lot about the internal workings of the RNC, the 168 members of the DNC, and I kind of look at a conclave very similarly, which is like you've got 100 plus men from 60 to 80. Well, actually, there's what, 4 below 60 that are. I mean, and it's all personal. Like it's easy to say. Like I know there's a lot of folks. The cardinal from Hungary is a person like who's someone I think I'd like to get behind, but I don't know that it matter. I mean, like it's just, to me, it's all like these guys are all have personal friendships and relationships. Obviously, when you look at the numbers and the number of cardinals that Francis appointed versus Benedict, I think it's just it's going to be hard to see how somebody who at least isn't in the Francis world comes out of this, because it's the Benedict numbers down to like 15, 20 of cardinals still in action. So I just but again, I look at this like an RNC fight. Like you really have to know who's friends with whom and all that kind of
Yeah,
stuff.
but I think that's part of the interesting thing. Francis has made so many cardinals from the periphery who don't know each other. And so you don't have the same kind of personal
Yeah, but he wouldn't have chosen them if they didn't. I
Right,
mean,
right.
he really tried to remake a lot of it in his image and actually, and then obviously push out people who were much more hardliner supporters of the Latin Mass and things like that. And so I just, to me, if I were a betting man, I'd say we end up something with Francis-ish.
Right. Second question I had was for all of you. I'm curious about some of the splits in the MAGA base, specifically with regard to 2028 and how that might play out. I don't know if any of you have seen the Vivek Ramaswamy speech from NACON. I think it was last year, when he discusses the split between a national libertarian MAGA movement and then a national populist movement. So I'm curious on how you think that kind of split might play out. And then also the split with regard to what America First means. I think that there's like a Thomas Massey wing. And Dan, I know you've talked about this in criticizing the Gaza Riviera kind of situation that Trump proposed a while ago. And I'm just curious on how you think those two kind of points of split among the MAGA base are going to play out in the next election cycle.
I'll go first. I think that you're right, that if you really wanted to, go to an AI or some other group that would do analysis, there are ideological fissures within MAGA. But I don't believe that those will be what determines who the nominee is or what the movement will stand for. It'll be about personality and charisma and leadership and power, pure power. The person who has the support of Don Jr. and Tucker and Charlie Kirk, the guys I call the board of directors, likely will be the vice president. That's what's going to happen in 28. It's not going to be who's where on Ukraine or who's where on the child tax credit or who's where on regulating tech, because Donald Trump's been all over the map on most of those issues, and people around him have disagreed with him. So I don't believe, even though those fissures are real, I don't believe they'll determine the nominee. Dan, then Sean.
I'll just be quick. I think it depends on where Trump is in 2 years. I think if this tariff stuff and other things have blown up and he's weakened, there will be an incentive. I don't know if someone would be successful to try to cleave MAGA apart. And, because otherwise, if it's unified, as Mark just said with the board of directors, it's hard to see getting around JD Vance.
Yeah. I think JD it's JD's to lose. I will say, I mean, it's funny how there is a bit of a shadow primary happening behind the scenes of a lot of folks, but I largely agree with Mark's analysis. This is very personality driven. I did a documentary called Front Row Joes that you can go check out at SeanSpicer.com. And it was funny because I traveled around to different rallies and talked to all these people who are Trump loyalists who've gone to 50, 60, 100 rallies and asked a very similar question, because I think what you're getting at, Ryan, is so fascinating. Who owns the mantle? And the reality that was funny is that even when Donald Trump leaves office, it will still be his to confer, right? I don't think it is not his, like no one else is the the deputy of MAGA. And I think that to Mark's point, I would rank it very like Don Jr. to me is at the highest level of deciding who gets the backing, and then Charlie to some degree, but also like there's enough people in between that you could have a 20%. I mean, like America First, I think for a lot of people means certain policies, and then for America First, for a lot of other people, they mean whatever Donald Trump says, and that's a very so. It's to me a fascinating question that you're asking, and I think depending on who you ask, but I will tell you, I think if I were wanting to run, the only thing I would care about was is Don Jr. going to be with me?
Yeah. Adam, how'd you find out about two-way and what do you like about it?
Yeah, I started watching y'all a couple of months before the election, and I don't know exactly how I found it. It could have been just popped up on YouTube, probably. But yeah, I've been watching ever since.
What do you like about it as a busy young person? Why do you make time for two-way on occasion?
Yeah, I mean, I think one, I feel like kind of an insider. You all have excellent expertise when it comes to what's going on behind the scenes. So, I feel like you don't get that oftentimes watching other shows. And so, yeah, that's one of the main things I take away. But also just I think the conversation's great.
Adam, how's your experience in law school been? Do you feel like, especially with all the focus being on the role of judges in the judiciary, and okay, what do you feel when you go in and out of these classes, especially like con law? You mentioned free speech.
Mhm.
Do you feel as though the academics are slighted, tilted one way or another?
So I would say that UVA might be kind of distinct in this sense, but we really do have a good balance ideologically. So I had one of the most like renowned originalist scholars as my civil procedure professor last semester, and this year for constitutional law, I have like a former Berkeley professor who worked at the ACLU for a decade. Like, so very different perspectives that I get. And then one of the reasons I came to UVA is because you really don't have the shouting down of like judges when they come to speak. Some of those things have happened at Stanford and other places, and I wanted to go to a place where different perspectives were going to be respected and listened to. And then specifically with regard to the politicalization of the judiciary, Judge McFadden, who handed down the order with the AP and them being able to have press access to the White House. I have a good friend who's going to be clerking for him next year or two years from now. But it's really interesting because he's a Trump appointee who was doing what was right under the First Amendment. Under First Amendment jurisprudence, he was totally correct in my view. Even though I kind of support what I don't know. I guess I'm more of a supporter of the administration in some respects, but I think that I think it's somewhat overblown the way that people talk about the judiciary being politicized, especially when I think a lot of judges are doing what they think is right and what they think the law. The law.
Thank you. Thanks for coming on.
Adam,
Good luck.
Adam, thank you.
That'll
Thanks.
be Senator Ryan in 2045.
How about that? Thank you, though.
Thank you, Adam. Thank you
All
for
right.
coming on.
Bye.
Good luck finishing off the year. Come back regularly. Celia, welcome in. Tell folks who don't know where you are what's on your mind, please.
Good morning, guys. I'm in Knoxville, Tennessee. It's a beautiful day. So I guess I have one question and then a half question. So kind of thinking about the conversation lately about who would possibly be the next mantle, lead the Democratic Party. Personally, I have not heard a single name that has any somewhat of a national profile that I cannot think off the top of my head of a video that went around a few years ago of them making a Kamala Harris-esque statement along the lines of her ACLU questionnaire. And I don't know if we're fully updating our priors to what modern politics might actually look like. Like we've always had newspapers, we've had TV for a while, so you can play clips and put someone's words into print. But I think the right, from what I can see, at least on social media, has a much better infrastructure of non-political affiliates. So like I can think of Drew Holden or Stephen L. Miller, where all it takes is one tweet from someone on the left, and immediately there's a quote tweet with a video, with words from their own, another tweet. I don't know. I mean, in terms of like the past election, the only ad I've heard referenced post the election is the Kamala Harris is for they, them, piece for you. I'm not saying that that was even a number one reason why Kamala lost, but I don't know that these candidates are going to be able to get away from that in an era where even independents, some of the more centrist left base is really allergic to that type of stuff.
All right. So yeah, is that your question or your half question?
Yeah. So my question basically was, do you guys think that that is going to end up being something that sticks? Is that going to be a trend going forward?
Great question.
What are the Democrats doing to kind of build up their own infrastructure? Because I can't think of a Democratic equivalent for Drew Holden or a Stephen Miller.
Great questions, Dan.
Yeah, so I think some of it is the infrastructure, but a big part of it is a candidate's nimbleness and a candidate's ability to kind of know some of these attacks that will come and then responding to stuff that you don't know. Donald Trump, as Mark said earlier, has said plenty of things on issues, contradicting himself, even in the same interview, right? But he's a great political athlete in that he understands how to kind of bulldoze through. Some of it's intimidation, some of it is using outside groups, some of it is like mocking people, memes, like all sorts of ways to drive a message, even when he's in complete contradiction. We have not been good at any of that the last several election cycles. Like Joe Biden was terrible at that even in 2020, but like everything was about Donald Trump. So I think one of the things that I am curious about is candidates are going to start hiring staff and candidates are going to start putting together the infrastructure, going and meeting with influencers. Like it takes time to build these networks, to get people to trust you, to feed them information, give them exclusives, kind of basically build an army and then teach them how to go march. And so I will be curious to see, this is like, to Mark's point, who can step up on the national stage and who cannot. You can say you can do it, but until the bullets start flying, you just don't know. Political bullets, just to be clear.
Sean.
Yeah, just another fabulous question. Because part of what I'll be honest, like I could write a book on what you just asked. It's so fascinating because one of the things that sort of is happening at the White House, right? So you saw not just me over there the other day, but they've now done like 6 days of this, right? Part of this is to have the support. So you can go out there and put out a show, right? To your point about like Drew Holden and others, but you need other people to embrace it. And so what's happened, I mean, I remember I was having this conversation with someone the other day about the RNC. In 2012, I remember fighting with the convention staff because if you accreditation for the conventions is done through the House Radio TV Gallery, which is insane, but it's a cost-saving mechanism. It's streamlined. And so we would have to basically fight for bloggers at that time to get additional credentials. And then as 2016 and then 2020 evolved, it became part of an integration. But initially the party itself was like, oh, we're not going to credential them because they're not media. The Trump team, both the campaign and now the White House, is what's taking a lot of these seeds and allowing them to blossom because they're embracing them. They're saying, we'll give you a position. We'll give you this. That's what happens. The Biden administration, by the way, I was reminded of this yesterday. Remember they tried to bring all these TikTokers in? And the problem is it wasn't a strategy. So I always tell people when they're doing media things and communications, there's a difference between a tactic and a strategy. An event, a press release, a tweet are tactics. Combined together, knitted together effectively is a strategy. What the White House is doing now by bringing in people, getting them content, getting them guests is a strategy. What the Biden White House did was just say, okay, TikTokers, you can come here for the day. I think part of this, and again, the short answer to your question is it's giving these people who want to put up shows, and where I don't think the left has done effective yet is to say, we're going to house you guys. We're going to give you the implication, the platform, the ability to grow and the support, but they're not there yet. So.
Well, I think we value the wrong marketplace. I mean, who did Joe Biden have over for dinner? Thomas Friedman, David Brooks. Like, he was obsessed with winning over the old guard, the old kind of like Excella corridor, like
he did an interview with Adam Mockler too.
Well, okay, but
I mean, the election,
right before the election, but it was after. And like, who did Kamala Harris fret over? 60 Minutes, right? Like, no, Kamala Harris could have spent the previous 4 years hosting people at the VP mansion, just like Sean said, doing a podcaster row, like when you have something big.
And she held out to not do 3 hours with Rogan, and
right. I mean, so like,
Yeah, you're
anyway.
right. You're right. Celia, thank you. I'm warning our affiliates. We're going to run a little bit over, but
Can
Celia,
I tell
thank
you
you
a
for
quick
coming
little
on.
funny story? Since
Yeah.
I'll never
Yeah,
tell
just-
it again if I don't.
Yeah.
When I was doing Dancing with the Stars, I know that's the funny part right
I
there.
love it when a sentence starts with that.
I know. So I knew I couldn't dance. Anyone who's watched knows I have zero rhythm or artistic qualities in my body, but 50% of the vote was judges. So on Sunday night, when everybody else was out there, stretching and practicing the routine, I would sit down with, kids who had great social media channels, and these guys just loved the attention, and we would have a strategy. We'd sit down Sunday night, Monday morning, meeting with social media influencers and asking them to say, hey, tonight at 8 o'clock, can you text 25? And embracing that kind of is what helps you get votes, whether it's for a reality show or a campaign.
Yeah. Sean, real quick, because I got to be on Smirconish in a couple minutes. Who do you
Go
have on
ahead, you're
tonight?
good.
Who do you have on tonight?
We've got Tammy Bruce from the State Department running through the Ukraine, China, all those great questions, and then Scott Turner, the Secretary of HUD.
Okay. Michael Moynihan doing 2 episodes of the Moynihan Report today. You can join live. Go to our website to find out. 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Clay Risen, the author of Red Scare, will be Michael's guest. Again, you can watch that live and participate in the conversation at 11 a.m. today on the two-way platform. And then at 2 p.m., Michael's guest will be Thomas Morton, host of It's Not Funny Anymore, Vice to Proud Boys. Again, join live at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. Megan, live at 5 p.m. today. Her guest, the media writer, Joe Concha, very smart guy, funny conversation is destined to occur between the two of them. So join Megan at 5 p.m. And then I will be on at 6 p.m. tonight. And my guest will be Drew Holden, the aforementioned Drew Holden. Celia, again, great question. 6 p.m. tonight. Then tomorrow, don't forget, we'll be back at 9 a.m. Eastern Time. And then my guest tomorrow on Next Up is Gavin Newsom, and some other surprises I'll tell you about soon. Thank you all for watching. Very grateful for the participation. We'll see everybody in 22 hours and 59 minutes tomorrow for the morning meeting. Have a great day.